And you guys are doing the long course. It's all marked long course. There's only one split. It'll come later on. Most of you will be done by that time. So it's the long course. Don't worry about it. I shouldn't even said it. But there's a sign that it says long course. If you're thinking in your head, what am I doing? It's the long course.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting ready to kick off our 2024 Kenda Cup Series in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! And on course now, our marathon cross-country racers, including some national champions in there.
And here we go. So I thought that first little bit of intro was a pretty nice way to start, hearing the actual commentators give their little announcement. And that was Tom that you saw in that first frame, and I love how at every race he always asks if there's any intelligent questions. You all didn't hear that part from the video, but that's what he says at the beginning of every race, so that we get all of our intelligent questions out of the way. No room for dumb questions. So let's get into the race here just a little bit. So when they called everybody up for staging, then I went straight up there to the front, so I was right on the line. I felt like I had a fantastic position to start from, and as you can see, everybody is passing me within the first, whoa, what is this, 1 minute of the race? Everybody's just flying right by me. Now, I'll have to say this about myself. I spent the entire last year prepping for endurance, so I got a really strong baseline of just going and going and going, and I really feel like I could just ride this course over and over forever. And actually last November was when I did my first race in several years, and it was the 8 hours of Temecula. That was actually my first YouTube video, which I didn't use with the GoPro, but I did have some video clips that I just kind of stuck together. Now, this year I want to focus more on intensity. I want to be able to perform at a higher level rather than just go and go and go forever. So, I'm actually categorized as a Category 3 rider for mountain bike racing, which would have been beginner probably 10 or 15 years ago, but now the scale is 1, 2, and 3, so 1 would be the highest, except for getting to the pro level. So actually, instead of registering as a Category 3 mountain bike racer for this race, I decided to go with the marathon category. I did the age 40 to 49 age group, and I did the marathon, which is 5 laps for my age group. And so if I did the cross-country race, which I would have raced as a Category 3 racer, then I would have only been doing 2 laps. And each lap is like 6.5 miles. So I kind of felt like that wasn't enough. Like, I'm used to doing long distance, long endurance, and so to do just 18 miles, I felt like that wasn't enough of a stimulus for me. And then also I was kind of thinking, okay, well if I do 5 laps, 5 times 6 is 30, so I'll do at least 30 miles, and I'll get about 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours, and if I could do a race pace for 3.5 hours, then I feel like that's a good solid race, training ride, all of the above, increased fitness, all of that. I felt like it was extremely beneficial all around. So I decided to go for the marathon category, and the marathon category isn't Cat 1, 2, 3, it's just marathon. So I was racing against everybody in my age group who signed up for the 5 laps. However, that's not all who started with me. Everybody who started with me was everybody who signed up for the Open, which would have been cross-country racers, the marathon racers doing 6 laps, and then also the 19 to 29 and the 30 to 39 age groups as well, which both of those groups would have been doing 6 laps. So that's who was all on the starting line there with me, and that's who was all passing me. And you probably heard the announcer mention that there were some national champions in that group as well. So, at the beginning there, when everybody passed me on the fire road getting started, then we all came to this Singletrack where it all kind of bottlenecked. So, as soon as that bottleneck happened, then that's when the field started getting strung out just a little bit. And so you could see that we're mostly rider to rider, just in a straight line back there. But there is a little bit of accordion happening, and it looks like most people are pretty good at the Singletrack. This particular part of it is rolling hills. It's up and down hills, it switchbacks, it kind of winds back and forth all up and through these mountains right here. And you could see that we just passed some people who were behind us. We saw them go in the opposite direction because we had already crossed over the switchback. But there's a handful of guys that are still back there behind me. And so I know that I'm not last at this point. And I feel like I'm sticking this guy in front of me pretty well. So I'm just trying to stay in line. Give him enough space so that in case we have to brake all of a sudden, that I'm not having to put a foot down. But also not letting him get away. If there is any draft benefit here, then I want to be able to utilize it. And I know that as soon as we get through the single track, that we're going to be on a fire road for just a little bit. And I'd like to have some bodies in front of me. Oh, there goes a guy. He, I don't know what happened, but he had to touch down. And so now he's losing his footing completely. He can't get started back on that ascent right there. So now the guys in front of me gapped me a little bit because that guy got in my way. But that's mountain bike racing. And so I know that this single track is going to go on for a little while. So I'm not necessarily in a hurry to catch that other guy. But I'd like to be on him by the end of the single track, by the time we get onto the fire road. Oh, and by the way, you're probably noticing that my data up there on the screen is just blank. You're just seeing blank lines. And that's because I forgot to start my GPS at the beginning of the race. I was so worried about getting my GoPro all recording and everything that I completely forgot to push start on the GPS. So I realized it after I get to the fire road. So you'll see some data pop up here in just a little bit. And I think I've got it pretty well lined up. So it should be mostly accurate. But also I did notice that on the ups and downhills, the percent grade doesn't change as fast as I'm moving. So it's a little bit slow to catch up on the grade. But you'll see that when it comes around. So this is a pretty fast little downhill section of this single track. And this is fun. I'm just flowing right here. Like, it feels really good. There was a little bit of rain last night, and so the dirt is just wet enough to like really grip pretty good, and I'm just loving it. So I come up here, make this turn, and it's a little bit of a fire road, but this is not the fire road that I was talking about. It goes straight back into single track right up here. So there we go, twisting around this mountain, and I know from the last race that this section gets really steep. So I make sure I'm in the right gear for that. And I climb right up there. And you can see I'm already catching up to that guy in front of me. I'm not too far off his tail. And this section up here is going to be a nice little fun flow. It's going to go up just a bit. And then we're going to start rolling down some hills. And it gets going pretty nice. Also, the weather feels perfect out here right now. This is exactly how I like a race to be, and this isn't going to be how it is the entire race. It's like this for the first and second lap, and then midway through the third lap, it starts to rain on us pretty bad. And so, in the third lap, like, I never trust California rain. Okay, I felt like it was probably just going to rain a little bit, sprinkle a little bit, and then be over. That's typical California rain. And I've ridden in the rain before too, but never raced in the rain. So I would actually find out by the fourth lap that the rain's not stopping. It rained all through the fourth lap and all through the fifth lap, and it got muddy. It got so sloppy muddy. It got slick, and it was pretty crazy. It was pretty darn fun, but it was pretty slick out there. So I hit my fourth lap still pretty hard actually. But then by the fifth lap, I had to slow it down and take my turns a little bit more cautiously because it did get pretty bad. All right, here we go. Look at this guy. So I'm already caught up to him. We're still not near the end of the single track. And so I'm pretty happy that I just naturally caught up to him. And the reason that I did is because there's so many people in a single file line going up this whole section. Oh, shoot. Did you see what happened right there? Okay. So that was a steep, tight turn, and everybody was in too high of a gear for it. Well, Most people anyway. I know that I was, and I think the guy in front of me was, and the guy in front of him was. And so when people were coming up that and trying to make that tight turn, then they were having to downshift. And all you hear is just gears clicking away. And so luckily, I was able to cut the inside of that corner a little bit, and my handlebars hit that tree or that bush, but I didn't go down. I kept my feet on my pedals, and I just kept going. I was able to kind of maneuver around it a little bit while downshifting. And so because of that, they gapped me again, which I'm actually not too worried about because we still actually do have a little bit left to go for this single track. So we're just going to cruise along here, and actually I think we are getting near the end of the single track before I hit the fire road, and then it gets into some double track that's quite a bit of climbing, and then we'll get some really fast, more technical, raw downhill type stuff. And so this is just a nice easy coasting. I'm pedaling quite a bit right here actually because I feel comfortable enough on the trails to pedal and go a little bit faster than just what coasting would be. And also I don't want the people behind me getting held up from how fast I'm going. And I want to catch that guy in front of me still. And I know that my time is running out before I get to the finish of this single track. So I do want to make up the difference in distance right there. And one thing about this first single track section is that it's not technical at all. Like it feels very man-made. Like it's very clean. There's nothing in the way. There's no rocks. There's not a whole lot of technical stuff to it. So I really feel like doing this on a gravel bike is very doable. It's probably a lot faster on a mountain bike. You could probably hit it a lot harder. The berms are fun on the mountain bike. But for the most part, it's pretty easy. I feel like a beginner could handle this particular trail pretty easily. Okay, and here we go. So we are on the fire road that I was talking about, and those guys just go. So no drafting benefit whatsoever for me right here, as I was kind of hoping for. They're just kind of out of here. Like they just went, and I couldn't hang. So I really try and push it more on the single track because I don't want to be in the way of people, and I don't want people coming up on me wanting to pass me. I feel pretty strong on single track as well, so I like to hit that as hard as I can and then kind of use the fire roads to recover just a little bit. Oh, there's my data. All right, finally I got something up on the screen. So take a look at what we've got here. So this fire road's 2 to 3% grade, 4% actually, and I'm holding 10 miles per hour. At this point, I think at this point in this lap, so like after I do a full lap back to this spot, my average speed was 11.2 miles per hour. And so that's interesting because you can see how the pace that I'm climbing at like 8% or 8 miles per hour, and then I'm descending way faster. And you're going to see that on some of these descents, I'm going 20-25 miles per hour. And so that really makes up the difference in average speed that I'm holding. And I'm going to point out my heart rate there, 154 beats per minute right now. 153, 154, back and forth like that. And that's pretty typical actually. So you'll notice that when I'm on the flats, when I'm on the descents, that my heart rate will drop down to the 130s probably, and then as soon as we get our climb start going again, it jumps up into the high 140s, mid to mid 150 range. And so that's about my tempo heart rate, and that's just what I climb at for endurance. If it was not so many laps, then I'd go a little bit harder, and I'd probably have my heart rate more in the mid to upper 160s for a lot of this race. But since I know that I've got 5 laps to do, I try to make sure that I hit it hard enough to feel something, to feel pretty jacked up or like I'm really working, but not so hard that I can't continue to move. So at this point in the race, I want to point out that I'm back on single track, but I think I called it double track earlier. And the reason that I called it that is because people are passing like crazy on this trail. And you can see it's a little bit wide right here. A lot of the trail is double track. Like, it's not difficult to pass somebody. And so everybody on the race is pretty courteous. They're always saying rider back or rider passing, or can I find a spot to pass type thing as they're coming up on you. So you kind of know when somebody's coming and you could scoot to the edge of the trail. And so most of the time when people were needing to pass me, it was no big deal. Although there were some trains of like 5 or 6 guys just flying, and in situations like that it was difficult to get out of the way, and there were a few times that I had to put my foot down just because I didn't want to get out of the way for the first 3 people and then like be back on the middle of the trail because it gets tight again, and then have the last 2 people get stuck behind me or crash into me or anything like that. So I was pretty mindful about how many people were coming up on me and paying attention of where I was and compared to everybody else. Now I want to point out this guy in front of me. So he passed me right at the top of the fire road before we turned onto the single track here. And so one of my goals is to kind of keep with this guy. And you can't hear it right now, but there's a guy behind me who has something that's like making a dinging sound. It's not a bell. He's not chiming his bell for me to get out of the way. It's just something that's like, it sounds like a little bell like dangling from his handlebars or something. And so I'm hearing this guy behind me the whole time, but apparently he wasn't ready to pass me on that last climb. So we just peeked over that first single track climb right there, and now we're doing a nice little descent. And I'm a faster descender than this guy in front of me. I think that I feel pretty good going downhill. I feel like I could hit it pretty fast, and especially because I did the 8 hours of Temecula in November. I haven't ridden the trail since then, actually, but I did this lap 10 times on that day. So I feel pretty comfortable about the trail and knowing what's on it and how fast I can hit it. So I'm actually going pretty fast here, and the guy in front of me is slowing me down just a little bit, which he's definitely a better climber than I am, and you're going to see that later on in this video because I'm going to pass him up and then he's going to pass me up. However, I'm not passing him right now on the single track downhill because we're going fast enough, and I don't want to make him get out of the way just for like a tiny bit faster. You know, it's not worth it in a 5 lap race. But this descent is a little bit demanding. You could tell because my heart rate's still at 156, and so I'm going pretty good down here. You see, there's just a few spots where his descending skills aren't quite as good. And I'm not saying that I'm like the best descender or whatever. I don't think that I have the best skills. I haven't been technically trained at all on descending, but I feel like I've got pretty good instincts with it, and I've done enough of it to kind of know the best way to go. All right, so here we go. We just dropped back down onto another wider trail, fire road right here, and so I pass him up immediately. Oh, and that was a fun little whoop-de-doo right there. Here's another one coming up. Yeah, I got a little bit of air. I like those. Those are fun, and especially going 25 miles per hour, you could get a little lift. There's another one. So just a few little whoop-de-doos down this whole section until we get back to the trail. And this is fun and so fast right here. I know at this point I need to downshift about 3 gears because I was maxed out at my top. And the reason being is because this corner right here, if you're in your highest gear, then you really can't spin your pedals right after that because the corner requires you to slow down too much right there. All right, so here we go. Back heading uphill. So I'm on a 3% grade right now, and holding 12 miles per hour. And so this is definitely my fastest lap. However, on Strava, you're not going to see that it's my fastest lap because I forgot to start my GPS on time. Although, when you look at the results of the race, which I end up posting the picture of my lap times on my Strava for this race, you'll see that this first lap is quite a bit faster than any lap that I've ever done on this course. And it was something like 34:54 or something like that, just under 35 minutes. So that's my best lap time ever. Although I would like to come out here and do either the cross country or maybe just try a single lap on my own just to see what I could PR on the lap. So you notice those guys who just flew by me. I think those guys were part of the cross country race. They started 15 minutes after us. So that would make sense that the leaders are catching us right about this point. And we're also about to see that guy that I passed on the downhill.
I passed on the climbs, you passed on the downhill.
Yeah.
And apparently he knew what was up. I left his comment in there on the video because I thought that was pretty cool. He pointed out that he'll pass me on the uphills and I'll pass him on the downhills, which I wish that would continue to be the case. But unfortunately, at this point, I'm just too far gone, and I won't be catching up to him again at all the rest of the race. So back to the grind, back to the climb. All right. You can see that it's mostly a steady, consistent 3 to 4% grade, although there are a few peaks that get up into the 10 and 12% grade zone. But for the most part, these climbs are right around 3 to 4%. And you'll also notice that I'm holding between 8 and 10 miles per hour for most of them. And so the trail just kind of curves around going like that, and you can see that it's wider than Singletrack. Again, so still easy for people to pass right here. It's not a big deal. You might hit your handlebars in the bushes just a little bit or in the weeds, but nothing that's going to take you down. So anyway, I'm just cruising like this. I'm letting myself recover a little bit, catch my breath, while still trying to maintain a decent pace and keeping it going. But as I mentioned, I would really like to come back to this course and give one lap my all just to see what I could do. I'd like to be able to do it in under 30 minutes. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about while I've got not much going on in the race at this point is some nutrition. So I'm a registered dietitian, so I take my sports nutrition very seriously. I like to calculate things out very clearly so that I have a real plan and I know exactly what's going on with my body nutritionally for the whole race. And so what I was planning was about 45 grams of carbs per lap. And so if each lap was going to take me about 35 minutes, then that's taking in roughly 90 grams of carbs per hour. And so that should be about right to fuel my entire ride. And since I was doing 5 laps, I figure I could keep 2 laps worth of fuel in my pockets, okay? And then hopefully I only have to stop to refill snacks and water bottles one time. And that's actually exactly what happened. I had 2 char gels in my pockets. Each are 45 grams of carbs. Okay, very easily digestible, loaded with electrolytes and easily digestible carbohydrates. So it's both sugars and maltodextrins. So what maltodextrins are they're sugars that have multiple sugars attached. So a sugar is a chain of sugar molecules, and a starch, like bread, for example, would be a very long chain of these sugar molecules. That's why bread breaks down into sugar. All right, well, what maltodextrins are is just a couple sugars attached together to be a very short chain, not enough of a chain to be a starch. So when you have all these maltodextrins mixed in there, then you have different types of sugars of different lengths, different chain lengths that make it so that your body can digest it very easily and very efficiently. Man, and sorry, I got to cut away from the sports nutrition real fast just for a minute, because a big group of guys just passed me. And I think that those are more of the cross-country guys. So this would be not the leader group of cross-country riders that started 15 minutes after me, but the second grouping of the guys. So the second train from the cross-country group. And actually, I think the cross-country group, they staggered their starts by just a couple minutes. So that would actually make pretty good sense why there's a group of them coming by me all at the same time together. And at this point of the race, we're actually coming up on the next peak. Okay, so on the map there, you can see that I'm at the very top, highest up part of the map. And so I'm the little dot on the trail. And so I'm cresting the peak right there. And that was a little technical climb. It got up to 13% right there. And now it's a very fast, flowy downhill. And you could really bomb this section. Like, you could really kill it. And especially with how sticky the dirt is right now. Like, just a little bit of rain last night, but not a whole lot. I mean, none this morning, really. So the trail is not wet or slippery or muddy at all. It's just slightly damp. You could really go all out on it, and so that's what I'm doing. There's a few little drop-offs that really get you picking up some speed, and so those are fun. And as long as your tires are at the right pressure, I feel like you could really nail those bottom corner turns. And so it's a whole lot of fun. It's a blast. It's too bad that you spend all that time climbing and then the downhill is over just like in a second. It's really fun though. So anyway, I'm doing that right here. And you can see that I'm up in the high teens as far as miles per hour goes. It looks like average grade is about 4% downhill. And so I'm just going all out. And actually, I had my tires at about 22 pounds per square inch. So when it starts raining on the third lap, then at the point that I stopped to refill my water bottles and get some more food and everything, I actually let some pressure out of my tires because I knew that the pressure was too high for me to be able to maintain my grip in the mud. And I actually probably wish that I would have had my PSI down a little bit for the first two laps as well. But you can see that I'm bombing this pretty fast, and man, it just feels good. Like you could really flow on this. And I think there was only one person in this entire race that passed me on one of these fast downhill sections. And the only reason that he passed me is because there are a few ups. And so the guys who are really going all out trying to race, oh, that was a fun little berm right there. There was a double section right there, so in case somebody needed to pass on the shorter berm, they could. But as I was going down here, the one guy that passed me, he was a real competitor, and I knew that he was going all out on the ups and the downs. So at one of the spots where it was like a down and then an up, like I knew that he had just come up right behind me. So I got out of the way the second that I had the opportunity. Oh man, and this part going up is a beast. The downhill felt so good, and then you just come up on 10% immediately. Okay, and it doesn't get any easier. It's I was going 5 miles per hour. There's a switchback at 10% right there, and then it levels off a little bit, but then another switchback, and it just keeps climbing at about something like 8%. Although it says 4 up there right now. I think the grade's just not changing fast enough. 5%, okay, so I guess it did level off a little bit, but after that 10%, like, it was just hard. On this crest right here, oh, I love this part. Because it's a narrow ridge, you just start going downhill fast. And this turn at the bottom, yeah, there you go. Right there. Okay, if you really lean into that berm, then you could hit it just right. but if you don't lean into it, then your tires slip down the side just a little bit, and it's not a very pretty sight. So if you know the turn, you know the corner, then you could really hit it going pretty good without having to tap your brakes. Alright, so just some more fun stuff right here. It's just some fun, flowy ups and downs, but I actually wanted to get back a little bit into the nutrition stuff again. Alright, so I had 2 char gels in my pockets. I took one after the first lap, okay? At the end of the second lap, I took my second one, and then right after I finished my third lap, I stopped at my station. I refilled both my water bottles, and then I grabbed 2 more char gels to put in my pocket. And that's all that I needed. For 3 hours, the char gels were just fine. I didn't need any solid food, I didn't feel like. And that actually sustained me really good for the entire race. I never felt like I lacked fuel. I never bonked. I felt strong. I mean, definitely strong enough for last place, which I feel like I'm in right now. I actually didn't end up in last place, even though all those marathon guys passed me. For my category, I was actually 7th out of 8. Okay, so I did it in 3 hours and 21 minutes. And if I would have cut 20 minutes off my time, okay, which in 5 laps, that doesn't feel like a whole lot. But if I would have cut 20 minutes off, then I would have been in 4th place for my category. So even though on my very last lap, I didn't see any human beings. Like, there was nobody left on the course. Like, I had almost wondered if they shut down the course and they're like, no more racing for today, it's raining too much. Which that didn't happen. But I really didn't see anybody passing me. I wasn't passing anybody. There's just nobody there left. And there actually were some other guys in the other categories that finished similar to my time, but I think they were actually doing 6 laps, and so there were some that only finished 5, and I'm not sure if they had mechanicals or whatever the case was, but they only finished 5 laps out of their 6, and their 5 laps were not too far off of mine. So whatever happened there, I felt like I was in last place, but I actually wasn't. And so on this part of the race, or this part of the course, it's very fun. Like I've already hit most of the climbs, all the peaks, and that drop right there. Oh, I love that drop, and that's a nice little jump. Oh man, I love that part. Okay, and I'm just hauling butt right here. This berm, you could take it so fast, turn completely sideways. With the GoPro, you can't really tell how sideways you turn because there's a horizon lock on it. But like if you saw the actual video of like how far sideways I was, I mean, it's almost like completely leaned over. So very cool. That last section was so fun. And for 5 laps, it was super fun every time. Although that last lap on the 5th lap, with how muddy it was a little sketchy. Like, I didn't take it nearly as fast. But this right here is the last uphill section of the day, of the lap, I believe. And it gets up to 8%, 9%. And it was just a short little climb, but a tough one nonetheless. And look at this. This guy was coming up right behind me on that climb, and he passed me right at the top of the climb, and then he's going to come down here and he's going to descend slower than me. I'm having to tap my brakes because this is my favorite section of the course. Alright, these little whoops that are coming up right here, you can hit them so fast, and if you're angling it right, if you're pulling your bike correctly to the edge, then you don't have to tap your brakes at all, and you just go flying, and you're just soaring over those things. Like, it feels so awesome. Like, I love that section of the course. It's my favorite. And those 2 berms, again, you could hit those full speed, just completely sideways. So I'm really mad at this guy actually, because he passed me right before the descent, and then his technical descending wasn't as good, and now I have to ride his butt through like all these fast fun parts, and I'm just bothered by it. But anyway, He didn't slow me down a ton. It's not a big deal. But look at this. He's got to put his foot down on the berm? Like, dude, you just came over that and passed me like I wasn't fast enough, and then you're not able to hang in there. It was a little bit frustrating. But anyway, he's going to lead me out to the line. So this is the end of the first lap coming up. And you're going to hear the announcer announce us as we pass through the gate.
Ryan Trail coming through. Craig Holtzler. Good job, Craig. David Kuko.
Did you hear that? Every time they get tripped up on my last name. Craig Pulsper? So anyway, that was just funny. Every lap I came through, they butchered my last name. It's Pulsifer, but it was pretty funny. So anyway, that's my first lap for you. I hope you enjoyed that. You got a little bit of data on the screen there for you. I'm also going to post a second video of the muddy lap. I don't have footage of the full lap, but I've got probably a decent chunk of the lap. Probably the last half of the lap I've got on video. So that'll be pretty fun. And I think I'm not going to voice it over. I'm just gonna leave it as raw race footage. And you're gonna see how much slower I'm going in the rain, which I still feel like I'm going a pretty fast speed, but from the camera you'll be able to tell that I'm a decent amount slower. And I was slipping a little bit, although no crashes, never went down, anything like that. And then at the beginning of the video, I'm going to show you how muddy my bike got and how muddy my my socks and everything got, because it was pretty bad. I was drenched after, and my bike shorts, man, it felt like a soggy diaper. All right, so anyway, check that video out. That's going to be a fun one for you to watch also, and it might be a fun one to ride along with. If you've got a trainer, or if you want to do any indoor riding, I think that one might be a fun one to just watch and kind of visualize yourself on the course. All right, so thanks for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy.